The Science of Mind by Ernest Holmes, read by Jean Perkel for April 27th. Different methods of treatment. Although several methods of treatment are used, there are but two distinct methods. One is called the argumentative and the other realization. The argumentative method is just what the word implies, though the argument is never with another person. It is a process of mental reasoning in which the practitioner argues to himself about his patient. He is presenting a logical argument to universal mind or principle, and if it carries with it complete evidence in favor of his patient, the patient should be healed. The realization method is one whereby the practitioner realizes within himself, without the necessity of step by step building up a conclusion, the perfect state of his patient. It is purely a spiritual and meditative process of contemplating the perfect man, and if the practitioner arrives at a perfect embodiment of the idea without confusion or doubt, it will at once produce a healing. Treatment is for the purpose of inducing an inner realization of perfection in the mentality of the practitioner, which inner realization, acting through mind, operates through the patient. Another illustration: let us suppose that Mary is sick and John is the practitioner. She comes to him and saying, I am sick. He understands the power of mind. She does not understand it. He does not try to hold a thought over or, or for her, nor suggest one to her. He speaks her name and makes his declarations about this name. He contradicts what appears to be wrong and declares a truth about her. What happens? His word, operative through universal mind, sets a law in motion on the subjective side of life, which objectifies through her body as healing. Mary thinks a miracle has been performed. No miracle has been enacted. John used a law which all men may use if they will. If Mary had been perfectly well, and her need had been for a position, the treatment would be of like nature. John would have declared into mind what should be done for Mary. There is only one law. Mary could set it in operation for herself if she understood its nature. Sooner or later, she must come to understand and make conscious use of this law. Between John and Mary, there is one universal medium, which is also in John and in Mary. It is not only between them, but in them and around them. As John, right where he is, knows the truth, since there is only one, he is at the same time knowing the truth right where Mary is, because his work is operative through a field which is not divided, but a complete unit or whole. As he knows within himself, he is knowing within the same mind which operates through the person whom he mentions in his treatment, no matter where that person may be. There is no absent treatment, as opposed to a present treatment. When you know it in one place, you know everywhere. When you give a treatment, you never send out a thought or hold a thought or make a suggestion. A treatment is a conscious movement of thought, and the work begins and ends in the thought of the one giving the treatment. The practitioner must do the work within himself. He must know the truth within himself, and he does this. The law unfolds. A thing which is known by any part of the universal mind is known by every part of it, for it is an undivided whole. If one were treating Henry Black, who is in another city, he would say, I am treating Henry Black of such and such a place. Then he would forget all about Henry Black as a personality and give the treatment. It is not necessary to specify the trouble. Occasionally there might be reason to mention a thing in denying its existence, but it is not the best method. Of course, there are certain thoughts back of certain things, and a knowledge of the disease might better enable some practitioners to know that what thought to deny. Another illustration of the difference between the argumentative method of treatment and the realization method will be found in the following. Mary Jones comes to John Smith and says, I have tuberculosis. In answer to this, he states, the word I now speak for Mary Jones. She is a perfect and whole, complete manifestation of pure spirit, and pure spirit cannot be diseased. Consequently, she is not diseased. This is an argument in the mind of John Smith, trying to bring out the evidence in favor of Mary Jones' perfection. It is an argument which produces certain conclusions in his mind, and as a result, it sets a certain law in motion for Mary Jones. As John does this, day after day, he gradually becomes convinced of her spiritual perfection. This is the argumentative method of treating. All argumentative statements merely conduct the mind of the practitioner to a place where he believes what he is saying. In using the method of realization, John Smith would say, "The word that I now speak is for Mary Jones." Then he would begin to realize the perfect presence, and only perfect presence. God is all there is. There is nothing else. God is in Mary Jones. She's now perfect. God is now a spiritual being. Let me repeat that. Okay. God is in Mary Jones. God is now a perfect being. She is now a spiritual being. It makes no difference, however, which method one uses, as each produces the same results. The method is a logical argument in the mind of the practitioner. By which he convinces himself of the truth of being. The other is the instant cutting through of all appearances to the reality back of all things. Undoubtedly, when he can pursue only the way of pure realization, we will have attained the ideal method. But since we do not at all times realize man's perfection, we go through this process called treating to find it out. Do not be afraid of this scientific approach. Do not be afraid to set down on one side all of the negative appearances, admitting them as a condition, and on the other side, bringing all the arguments at it one at a time, which offset these apparent conditions, and finally realization will come. This argumentative method of treatment is a series of affirmations and denials for the purpose of building up in the mind of the practitioner a state of realization and acceptance. The power is in the realization, but there is also power in the argument. The one giving the treatment believes that there is a power and a presence that responds to his thought. No matter what all the world believes, no matter what anyone says, he must believe that this power does respond to his word. As Jesus said, "Heaven and earth shall pass away, but my words shall not pass away." This is conviction, and if a practitioner does not have such conviction, he must acquire it. After much experience, he will learn how best to build up a faith in the power of spirit. We are to approach this presence simply, directly, and easily, for it is within us. We can never get out of ourselves. We shall always be interior in our comprehension. We are here, and it is also here. In giving spiritual treatments, we find that the more completely the mind turns away from lack, the more completely the thought stops trying to figure out how the demonstration can be made, and more completely it refrains and willpower, and strange as it may seem, the less it tries to concentrate, the more power it has. Treatment has nothing to do with any effort which attempts to concentrate the energy of God. The energy of God is already concentrated everywhere. The gardener does not will potatoes and cabbage into being, but he has a willingness to comply with the law of nature, and provides the conditions which make it possible for the law to produce them.